This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We turn now to a breaking news story about the National Security Agency and its secret role helping the military and CIA carry out assassinations overseas. According to journalists Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald, the NSA is using complex analysis of electronic surveillance rather than human intelligence as the primary method to locate targets for lethal drone strikes in Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. A former drone operator for JSOC, the military's Joint Special Operations Command, said the NSA identifies targets based on controversial metadata analysis and cell phone tracking technologies, but it's proven to be an unreliable tactic that's resulted in the deaths of innocent or unidentified people. The U.S. has reportedly carried out strikes without knowing whether the individual in possession of a tracked cell phone or SIM card is in fact the intended target of the strike. The former drone operator, who is a source in the story, said, quote, "It's really like we're targeting a cell phone. We're not going after people, we're going after their phones in the hopes that the person on the other end of that missile is the bad guy," the quote says. Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald have also revealed the NSA has equipped drones and other aircraft with devices known as virtual base tower transceivers. These devices create, in effect, a fake cell phone tower that can force a targeted person's device to lock onto the NSA's receiver without their knowledge. Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald's article appears in the new online publication, theintercept.org, published by First Look Media, the newly formed media venture started by eBay founder Pierre Omidyar. Glenn and Jeremy co-founded The Intercept with filmmaker Laura Poitras. Glenn Greenwald is the journalist who first broke the story about Edward Snowden. He was previously a columnist at The Guardian newspaper. He's joining us via Democracy Now! Video stream from his home in Brazil. Jeremy Scahill is producer and writer of the documentary film Dirty Wars, which has just been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary. He's also author of the book by the same name. Jeremy joins us from Los Angeles. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Jeremy, let's begin with you. Lay out the significance of this explosive story.
Well, Amy, we're living in the era of pre-crime, where President Obama is continuing many of the same policies of his predecessor, George Bush, and Vice President Dick Cheney. And there's this incredible reliance on technology to kill people who the United States thinks, doesn't necessarily know, but thinks may one day pose some sort of a threat of committing an act of terrorism or of impacting U.S. interests. And the U.S. wants to shy away from having its own personnel on the ground in countries like Yemen or Pakistan or Somalia, eventually Afghanistan. And so what's happened is that there's this incredible reliance on the use of remotely piloted aircraft, i.e. drones. What we discovered in the course of talking to sources, including this news source that we have who worked with both the Joint Special Operations Command and the National Security Agency, is that the NSA is providing satellite technology and communications intercept technology to the U.S. military special operations forces and the CIA that essentially mimics the activities of a cell phone tower and forces individual SIM cards or handsets of phones. There's two separate devices. When you have your telephone, your mobile phone, you have a SIM card in it, and that can be tracked, but also the device itself can be tracked. And what they do is they force the SIM card or the handset of individuals that they're tracking onto these cell phone networks, and the people don't know that their phones are being forced onto this cell phone tower that is literally put on the bottom of a drone and acts as a virtual transceiver. And so when they are able to triangulate where this individual is, they can locate or track them to within about 30 feet or so of their location. And what we understand is that under the current guidelines issued by the White House, President Obama gives a 60-day authorization to the CIA or the U.S. military to hunt down and kill these individuals who they've tracked with these SIM card tracking technologies or handset tracking technologies, and that they only have to have two sources of intelligence to indicate that this is the individual that they're looking for. Those two sources can be signals intelligence, which is what I've just been describing, And they can also be what's called IMINT, or imagery intelligence, meaning just a satellite image of an individual that they think to be the suspected terrorist. They do not require an actual human confirmation that the individual SIM card or phone handset that they're tracking is in fact possessed by the person that they believe is a potential terrorist. And so what we understand is that this is essentially death by metadata, where they think or they hope that the phone that they're blowing up is in the possession of a person that they've identified as a potential terrorist. But in the end, they don't actually really know, and that's where the real danger with this program lies. And the reason that our source came forward to talk about us is because he was a part of this program and was a participant in operations where he knew the identity of one individual that was being targeted, but other people were killed alongside of that person. And he also said that he just felt incredibly uncomfortable with the idea that they're killing people's phones in the effort to kill them, and that they don't actually know who the people are that are holding those phones.
And the source, then, is in addition to the documents that Edward Snowden released.
That's correct. In fact, when we first started talking with this source, he was describing the architecture of this program, where the NSA is working closely with the CIA and with the Joint Special Operations Command. And then we were able to validate what he was saying through the documents that were previously provided by the NSA whistleblower, Edward Snowden. Amy, the platform that the CIA is using in Yemen and other countries is known as Shenanigans. It's interesting because the NSA uses a lot of sort of Irish terminology, Blarney Stone and other Limerick, other operations. This one is called Shenanigans, and the platform that's used by the U.S. military is called Gilgamesh, or GMesh for short. And that's this technology where they're able to not only triangulate the position of SIM cards and cell phones, but the NSA also puts a device on the drones that are flying in various countries around the world, known as Air Handler. And the Air Handler device is literally just sucking up all of the data around the world. So it's sort of a secondary mission. In other words, in plain terms, what I'm saying is that every time a drone goes out in an effort to track someone or to kill someone, the NSA has put a device on that is not actually under the control of the CIA or the military. It is just sucking up data for the NSA. And as several former NSA people have told us, the NSA just wants all the data. They want to suck it up on an industrial scale. So they're also piggybacking onto these targeted killing operations in an effort to just suck up data throughout the world.
Yet I want to turn to President Obama, who was talking about drone strikes during that first major counterterrorism address of his second term. It was May 23rd, 2013.
And before any strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured, the highest standard we can set. Yes, the conflict with al-Qaeda, like all armed conflict, invites tragedy. But by narrowly targeting our action against those who want to kill us and not the people they hide among, we are choosing the course of action least likely to result in the loss of innocent life.
Jeremy Scahill, respond.
Well, I mean, first of all, we saw very recently that the U.S. carried out a drone strike that killed many members of a wedding party in Yemen. The question should be asked, how is it that those individuals were selected on that day for that strike? And what the president is saying is very misleading, according to people who actually work on this program. And in fact, when we asked the White House for comment, we went to the National Security Council spokesperson, Caitlin Hayden, and asked directly, is it true that you're ordering strikes where you don't actually have any human intelligence? And the White House refused to directly answer that. They just said, well, we don't select targets based on only one source of intelligence. Well, we knew that already, and we told them that we knew that. The point here is that they don't actually have a requirement to confirm the identity of the individuals that they're targeting, and that's one of the reasons why we're seeing so many innocent people being killed in these strikes. It effectively amounts to pre-crime, where an acceptable level of civilian deaths is any civilians who die in the pursuit of a limited number of so-called bad guys.
Didn't the spokesperson also say, though, confirming that human intelligence was used to try it afterwards, but not before, after a death.
I'm not sure that they're aware of the kind of twisted irony of the statement that they issued to us, because on the one hand, they're refusing to acknowledge that they don't actually need to confirm the identity of people who they're trying to target for death. On the other hand, they say, oh, well, when we kill someone, we do actually confirm whether or not civilians were killed by using human intelligence. So it basically is, the standard is we can kill you if we don't know your identity, but once we kill you, we want to figure out who we killed.
In Yemen, any human intelligence on the ground?
Well, yes. I mean, the U.S. does have a very limited presence. In fact, my understanding is that there are small teams of U.S. Special Operations Forces, Navy SEALs, and others that are scattered in various remote locations around Yemen. Of course, the U.S. has long had a counterterrorism presence inside of the Yemeni capital, Sana'a. The CIA also has its own personnel. But I want to underscore something that's a little bit of a nuanced point, and that is that inside of Yemen, the U.S. has largely outsourced its human intelligence to the Saudi government. And the Saudis have been playing their own dirty games that have their own dirty wars inside of Yemen. And many times the Saudis will feed intelligence to the U.S. That is intended to benefit the regime in Saudi Arabia and not necessarily the stated aims of the U.S. counterterrorism program. They also rely on notoriously corrupt units within the Yemeni military and security forces that receive a tremendous amount of U.S. military and intelligence support, and oftentimes will use that U.S. aid to target Yemeni dissidents or to be used in defense of various factions within the Yemeni state. So the short answer, Amy, is yes, there is a very limited U.S. military human intelligence presence on the ground, but most of it, the overwhelming majority, is outsourced to the notoriously corrupt Saudi regime and its operations and operatives and informants inside of Yemen.
We're going to break, and when we come back after a minute, we'll continue with Jeremy Scahill as well as Glenn Greenwald. They have just co-authored their first piece for their new online publication called The Intercept. We will link to it at democracynow.org. This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute.